All right. So first off, like Anna said, my name is Jason Catanese, and I feel very privileged to be here. I am a teacher, so I do not have a theology background, but I think that that's something that's even kind of cool in this setting, because if you were to ask me if I ever would be an OCF speaker back in whenever I was an OCF, I probably would have told you no. But I'm very grateful for the opportunity. And so tonight, our maxim that we are discussing is be grateful. And so Anna told me that I had to read the whole thing, and the whole thing is literally be grateful. So first off, I'm so grateful to be here. And I really believe that gratitude is an attitude. So a lot of you probably have heard that saying before, and it's something that I definitely believe that is so true in this life. I often think of the words of Father Alexander Schwemann in his book, For the Life of the World. And he always kind of talks about to be Christian is to finally breathe right and to walk right. And so part of that means that breathing right and walking right is seeing the grace of God in everything that we see, touch, or do. So breathing and walking right is seeing the grace of God in everything that we see, touch, or do. So as St. John points out, a spiritual person is the one who is grateful for everything. He is the one who receives everything with thanksgiving and knows that he has nothing except what he has received from God. In our lives, we have so much to be grateful for, but I'll be honest and I'll be the first to admit, I was kind of blind to how much I was given in my life until I started my job as a teacher. So I went to school, I studied political science, I was always interested in going into politics. And I was fortunate enough to join a program called Teach for America that placed me into Phoenix, Arizona. And the second I met my students, which a lot of people on this call know, I've been sort of re-enlightened and transformed through the eyes of my students. I sort of saw just how important it is to see all the gifts that God has given us. And so whenever I started this talk, I said, gratitude is an attitude. And if you look in the life of our church, in the Old Testament, Thanksgiving is central in the life of God's people. The temple was literally used to offer sacrifices of thanksgiving and praise. In the Psalms, we continuously hear this concept of thanksgiving to God. And in the New Testament, Thanksgiving is the very essence of the church's life. If we go to church every single Sunday, the central point of church, the climax of church, is the Eucharist. Does anyone know what Eucharist literally means? Yes, Alethea, Thanksgiving. So Thanksgiving, Eucharist means Thanksgiving. It's the very center of church's liturgical worship of God, in which the faithful lift up their hearts and they give thanks unto the Lord. So this gratitude and attitude part comes from a lot of just learning from my students. And I'll be very honest in terms of, I never really realized how blessed I was. And I never really realized what I had, because my whole life was sort of, a life in which my parents worked hard to give me everything I possibly needed. I never had to worry about what I was going to eat. I never had to worry about what I was going to wear. I never had to worry about what school I was going to attend. It was always more a question of, what do you want? It wasn't a question of what do you need. And so a lot of you know that we started this camp in Arizona called Camp Catanese, which is for my former students to be able to attend college. And one of the biggest eye-opening experiences that we ever had was the first year that we were doing camp. And the very first year that we were doing camp, we had 120 high school students that had never once experienced camp before. And what we literally did was we took the Antiochian Village and Camp Nazareth and Ionian Village and all these camps from around the country, and made it for kids that were growing up in inner city Phoenix. And just instead of having Christian education, we had education that was for kids to go to college. But if anything, all of the staff and all the people that were working at these camps, they were coming from all these different Orthodox camps around the country. And we were trying to live this ethos that we had at these other camps, this love, this Christ-like embodiment of just loving others no matter what and giving them that faith. So the first time that we have these kids, you know, just like at any one of your camps, the counselors are standing there. They're crazy. They're running at the kids. They're hugging the kids. The kids are standing there like this, like, who are these crazy people that we've never met, and why are they hugging me? And the kids are walking up with just bags of whatever they had. So that was one of the first insights for a lot of my friends that were the staff members that we begged to come out here, that some of the things that we're given in life, we just take for granted. And so these kids are walking in with these bags, and, you know, it's just like shopping bags or garbage bags full of whatever stuff that they could grab from home. And one of the things I told the counselors was, I said, make sure to check all their beds to see what they might need. And so the counselors were like, yeah, we'll check the beds. And later that night, whenever we did kind of a whole, you know, kind of walkthrough of all the different cabins, all the different kids and what they had, we realized that only about 2/3 of the camp had something to actually sleep with. So there was, you know, a full 40 some kids that didn't bring a single thing to sleep with. And the other 80 might have brought just a pillow or a blanket or something like that. So, you know, that night, a bunch of us, we ran to Walmart, we cleared out like their entire section of all their pillows and everything. And when we came back, a lot of counselors, I said, hand these out to the kids. A lot of counselors were very confused and kind of asking questions. Well, why didn't the kids bring this stuff? Or, you know, why don't they have this stuff? So it was a very eye-opening experience for a lot of people. And I said, if you really want to know, ask them. And I distinctly remember going into some of the cabins with some of the counselors and, you know, seeing kids that were being so resourceful for each other. And, you know, you saw one kid that had a pillow and a blanket, and immediately he gave his blanket to another friend because he's like, well, I have a pillow and a blanket. He's like, I don't need both. He's like, you can have my blanket. Or another kid was like, oh, we can just like push our beds together and then like we can like share everything. And when we started to ask the question, you know, why don't you have these things? The kids were almost confused because their answers stemmed from, well, in my house, you know, I sleep on the floor. Or in my house, I sleep on the couch. Or in my house, we have one bed. And if I took the pillows and the blanket, then my family couldn't have that. It was never a question of what they didn't have, but more so it was a reflection of what they did have. And what they did have was this love that their family gave them. I remember thinking through that whole night and just remembering, you know, my entire life, I never once had to think about where I was going to sleep. And so it was this beautiful kind of reflection that God kind of put into my life and my friends' lives, that we are given so much and sometimes we're blind to what we are given. So later in our camp sort of first year, the very first night, again, we had our very first meal. And I remember, like, at every church camp I've ever been to, you know, right before a meal, you stand and we pray. And we never once talked about that. And so it's right before the meal, and I get up to lead the camp because I look around and I realize that I'm actually in charge of a camp now. And I tell all the kids to stand up, and then I realize, wait, we never discussed if we're going to pray or not. And so we then said, let's stand and be grateful. And so we had kids come up and start saying into the microphone things that they were grateful for. And every single time that we do this, you just hear the words from kids that see the beauty in everything. And I remember the first meal we ever had, which was chicken parmesan. And all the kids went through the line and they came back, they were eating their food. And immediately all these kids went up after they were done eating. And I immediately got up from my seat, ran over, because I was like, no. We didn't buy enough for seconds because I thought that they were trying to get seconds. And the kids were like, no. We just want to talk to the cooks, and we want to talk to the kitchen staff. And so all the cooks and the kitchen staff came out and they just said, you know, what is this called? And the kitchen staff and the cooks were like, this is called chicken parmesan. And a lot of kids, this was the first time ever trying chicken parmesan. And they just said, well, we just want to say thank you because you guys cooked this meal for us. And immediately I just had this reflection. I know a lot of my friends had this reflection. A lot of you on this call, we've talked about things like this before, where, you know, how many times do we go through the line, and this is obviously a metaphor, we go through the line of life and we don't go back to say thank you, or we don't realize what we've been given. So when these kids stand up and they say what they're grateful for, they always make sure to say that they're grateful for the kitchen staff, the counselors, they're grateful for their parents, their brothers, their sisters. One student, Jaron, actually in one of our camp videos, he says that he's grateful for all the things he's been through in life, because if he hasn't gone through those things, he wouldn't be the person he is today. And he says that he wants everyone to know that he loves you and that we all love you. And if you ever need to remember that, just remember his words. If there's anything more Christ-like, then I don't even know.